Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And Ted is busy doing what Ted does when he's not recording Card Talk, which is just about anything else. Ted actually is surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, but he's into a ton of games, and and Lord of the Rings is maybe one of his primary games, but he also plays what's the Star Wars miniature game that I don't know anything about? He plays. What's that?
I said pass. I haven't got a clue.
Oh, okay.
Is it X-Wing?
Oh, he plays X-Wing, right? That's it. And he's got Arkham. Like, he's into the whole thing. So, but he's moving this weekend. All of that to say is he's not doing any of that. He's moving all his games that he plays into his new place. So hopefully we'll catch him next recording time. But it's great to have Grant back from all the pain and suffering he was going through, giving birth to his granddaughter. Not that he was giving birth to his granddaughter, but it's the way that goes. So it's good to have Grant along for this ride. And also, you guys can come along for the ride. We have a blog. You can see the blog. The information is all over here. CardTalk2018.com. Matt keeps up with everything that we're doing over with us on the show, and he does his own things. He does written playthroughs. He finally just beat Fortress of Nirn a couple weeks back, which was really good. We have email, cardtalk2018@gmail.com. We have a Patreon if you want to support us, patreon.com/cardtalk2018. We have Second Breakfast, which is our live playthrough series. That's Micah Quantz is over there doing that for us. We have all sorts of ways you can engage in the Card Talk community. Whew, that's a lot to say. But Grant, what card are we doing today?
Well, at least you're not reading out 50 names from the Patreon list anymore.
Yeah, I know. I got too much.
But today we're traveling back to the core set for a spirit event known as Dwarven Tomb, which is 1 cost, action, return 1 spirit card from your discard pile to your hand. And unfortunately, I am not singing out the flavor text.
The dwarves no more shall suffer wrong. The dwarves of yore made mighty spells, while harmony fell like ringing bells in places deep, where dark things sleep in hollow halls beneath the fells.
There you go.
Okay, nobody. I have this really raspy voice right now that's a little deeper than normal because my daughters had the last swim meet of the summer, and so I was cheering them on. So I kind of lost my higher range. So now I can really do the Barry White.
I was going to say, if you wanted to hear that, pledge to Patreon.
Yeah.
Get up to 100 patrons, and we'll actually release a composition.
Yeah. Right. If you get up to 100 patrons, we won't release it. That's the better one. As a quick aside, I used to, as a teacher, we had a in the cafeteria in the United States. We have every kid goes to the cafeteria and eats lunch and things like that, and so there's usually like some sort of sound system. So one year we had a fundraise, a change drive where the kids would throw change in these things, and we would put a line on the size of these big change jars, and so I would just start singing, and I would say I'll stop singing when the change gets up to that line, and so those were always the quickest and best donation days, is when I would start singing and they put the change in. They'd be like, stop singing, Walsh, stop singing.
Yeah, that's why he's got the idea of releasing a CD now.
Yeah, no, I don't. Grant's going to release the CD. I'll just sing backups. Grant, tell us about Dwarven Tomb.
It's a very interesting card. Most people use it to spirit events such as Galadrim's Greeting or a Test of Will.
Before you go on, let's make sure we clarify the rules, though, because this is an action. Okay, let me set this up. Okay, so if you get a treachery, and you need to do something, this is an action, and so there's no action window. It's not a response, so you have to. If you want to get Test of Will back to cancel that treachery, you have to do it before revealing the encounter cards. So you can't reveal a treachery, use this action, and then return a Test of Will and then play Test of Will. There may be an action window in there, but the problem is that the canceling there's not. But
no.
But there also, if you're trying to cancel use the Test of Will to cancel, there's also a game action in between the reveal of the encounter card and the playing of the Dwarven Tomb. That's the action, and so when you play Test of Will, you have to do it immediately following the reveal of the card you're trying to cancel. Yes. And so by playing the action here, it doesn't. It screws up all the timing of that, and that's true for a lot of, not a lot, but just be careful of pulling the action, using the Dwarven Tomb's action to get something with a response back, because the response is usually invalidated by the Dwarven Tomb's action. So you have to do. The long and the short of it is, everybody out there, is you have to do the Dwarven Tomb a little bit before. You kind of have to pre-plan when you're going to use Dwarven Tomb.
Yeah, there is no action window between the end of your committing characters to the quest and when you start revealing cards off the encounter deck, and say you reveal Necromancer's Reach. There isn't an action window after that. There is a response window where you can trigger stuff like Eleanor or a Test of Will.
Right. Responses can always trigger as long as the response criteria is met.
Yes. So. But there is no action window until after the last card is revealed.
Right. And that's a rookie mistake that a lot of people make, and understandably so.
I still make it now. When
I know, right? Right. Well, you can play however you want. It's your game. But yeah, like you think you wanted that Test of Will, so you're like, I don't want to have to pay for Dwarven Tomb and then a Test of Will, so I'll wait. But technically, you can't do that. Anyways, I didn't mean to interrupt, but it was a great time since you were talking about Galadrim's Greeting or Test of Will, that responses.
But you can actually return other spirit cards than events. You could have returned, say, an Armor of Erebor, which is a 2-cost spirit attachment. Or you could return, say, an Escort from Edoras to play another turn. You aren't restricted to spirit events, which is what is most commonly brought back.
Right. And that's the Scroll of Isildur that brings back spirit events. But this is a nice card for spirit, because there's a lot of. It seems like if you're playing spirit and other, like if you're playing a dual sphere, tri-sphere deck, it just seems like you're using a lot of space for spirit cards, because there's just so many, unexpected courage. If you're putting three Test of Wills, and a lot of times hasty strokes, especially if you're a newer player, and then all of a sudden, that's 9 cards, and you're like, how did I use up all my deck space so fast? It's because Spirit has a lot of key events and cards that you want to have in a deck. And, the game is really good at getting rid of those cards, whether, the card was discarded because of, what's the one in the core set that gets rid of all your events? I can see it, I just can't name it.
What is it? It's not What Flies. It's
by night.
Is it Eyes of the Forest?
Oh, Eyes of the Forest. That's what it is. Yes. And so, like you get rid of all those events and it's like, brr, and then you draw Dwarven Tomb and you can get that event back. I remember at the very beginning of the game, not that I was around then, but even when I just started getting into it and listening to Cardboard the Rings and things like this, when the Noldor archetype became more prevalent and kind of more powerful, it was really nice to be able to pull those events back into your hand that you, or those spirit cards that you were coming back into your hand, because Círdan, you get rid of gets rid of a card. Aristor gets rid of your whole hand, so you could use Dwarven Tomb to bring back any of those spirit cards. Whether you're discarding them on purpose or whether you have to discard them through encounter card effects, man, Dwarven Tomb is really nice. And even further back than the Noldor archetype, I know that I'm droning on, I'm sorry, but I'm really jazzed up about Dwarven Tomb. People were running out of cards in their deck. They were just doing card draw, card draw, card draw, card draw. And so they wanted Will of the West, but sometimes you wouldn't get Will of the West. Sometimes it would be discarded. So you would put 3 Will of the West in your hand and then 3 Dwarven Tombs in your hand so that you could get Will of the West, so you could redraw your reshuffle your discard pile. So I mean, there was a lot of Dwarven Tomb chicanery at the beginning during the early times of the game, and I don't know. For me, I feel like it's a card that's overlooked a lot, but it shouldn't be. And I also feel, lastly, and then I'll let you react to everything that I just had to say, I also feel like there should have been one of these for every sphere, and not that it has to be cost 1 or return I don't know. I feel like there could have been one of these for every sphere, because a lot of the stuff in that first cycle, in the Shadows of Mirkwood cycle, seemed to be equal opportunity for a lot of the spheres. But I don't know. Maybe the designers realized that was Nate French and Lucas. So, they were designing. Maybe they just were like, spirits. People want spirit cards. We're not going to do this. But I don't know. Grant, I've monopolized the conversation long enough.
Right. First of all, tackling your first point, I am glad that they didn't release a card like this for every sphere, because of the fact that I don't think every sphere needs it. Tactics doesn't. I mean, would it be nice to pull a tactics card back from your discard? Yes. But thematically, not really possible.
Right.
Leadership, Jack of all trades, master of none. You could possibly find a thematic way of doing that. Whereas with Law and Spirit, you could give Law something similar to this, but again, it'd probably be at a higher cost because of the fact it's Law.
Right.
And you've got to weigh the pros and cons. Spirit, it's brilliant. You've got a lot of low-cost events and allies that you can pull out that have some negative and beneficial effects. So I mentioned the escort from Edoras. When it commits to the quest, it gets a bump of 2 willpower, but then it discards itself. That's why I use this one as a point to bring back for Dwarven Tomb over, say, something like Arwen.
Right. I mean, I guess, early in the game's design, the designers were talking about this being built around spheres as opposed to traits. That kind of went out the window. But, so I guess Spirit is the recursion sphere with Will of the West, with Stand and Fight, with Fortune or Fate, like all those. So, it stands to reason that Dwarven Tomb is in Spirit and it's solely Spirit cards. So, but I don't know. It would be nice to have recur tactics. Bring your phone back into him.
Well, you do have some recursion. Obviously, you've got the not the Scroll of the Sealed Door. It's the tactics version of that. but you also
Right.
have Hammer, who can recur events.
Right.
Obviously,
It's much more specific in other spheres. Like you're either
yes,
right,
it's a
and
lot
so
more directed rather than universal like what Dwarven Tomb is. Yes,
right.
but for Dwarven Tomb, I agree with you. I think it's a brilliant card, and it doesn't get used nearly enough, in my opinion. I mean, it's got a popularity of 8 on Rings DB, so
Right. Which is
uh,
which means it's super popular, but I feel like it's not as popular as it once was.
yeah.
Right.
But then again, everything has its time. I mean, this came out in the core set, so this is one of the very first cards that's been designed and been around from the beginning. It's still got a popularity of 8,
Right.
so I think it's doing pretty well.
Yeah, and I guess when you're building a deck too, with a complete card pool, there's just so many tricks that, do you want to bring back a trick that you've already used, or do you want to, and include 3 Dwarven Tombs, or do you want to use those 3 deck slots for some other card that's going to be, better, right? Like, I don't know.
And I think that comes down to the quest you're playing, knowing the quest.
Yeah, I mean, right. I think that I think it just depends on what you want your deck to do. If your deck is super honed and you're like, I need it to do this, and I know that I'm going to lose these spirit cards, or like you said, the quest has attachment hate, and you want to keep your unexpected courages on card on your heroes. I guess, but it's I feel like this was really popular early on because there just wasn't that many tools in the toolbox, not just of spirit, but on for all the spheres. And so instead of having 15 different tools in your toolbox, you just use the same hammer over and over again. You're like, oh, I'm gonna Dwarven Tomb stand and fight back into my hand, so then I can stand and fight whatever back out into play, and so that's
well, here's the thing. You just mentioned something. Back in the early day, there was a lot of there still is a lot of attachment hate. So back in the early cycle, especially with attachments, say for example, unexpected courage, there wasn't very many ways to recur that back to your hand. Dwarven Tomb was one, and then you had Erebor Hammersmith that could do it as well. But obviously, they're 2 separate spheres, so naturally you'd probably gravitate more to the Dwarven Tomb, especially if you've got, say, 3 copies of each.
Right. I mean, does this card suffer from being too broad? Like, does this limit design space because it's like bring back any spirit card? Like, do you think that this card would, stand the test of time now in the design, because it's like as the game has gone on, having cards that do more specific thing, like Reforged, the records, they only bring back, events. They don't bring back everything, so like,
I think if
just
it was
for one, it's one. Costs
yeah,
one.
I think by today's standards, it would be nerfed if they were to relook at it and redo it.
Right.
But I think because it's been out so long and they haven't FAQ'd it, they haven't nerfed it in the past 10 years, I think it's safe to say that it's not going to be touched.
No, it won't be touched, but I'm wondering if it would just be designed.
It would be designed differently now if it was to be released now. I think because you've got the records, they'll probably take out events. I think it would be Dwarven Tomb would be Spirit Allies over events or attachments, because you've got stuff like Reforged, you've got the records for events.
Mm-hmm.
Dwarven Tomb in itself, it's a tomb, so therefore that leads me to believe ally or hero. And since you've got Fortune or Fate, that brings back a hero. It's,
right. And you have Stand and Fight that brings back allies from any sphere. Not neutral. It doesn't bring back Treebeard or Gandalf. But
Yeah, but I think if it was designed today, it would be Spirit Allies that was brought back with Dwarven Tomb.
Yeah.
But because of when it was released and designed, I think it's brilliant the way it is.
Yeah, and I don't think it's, let me make sure I'm clear. I don't necessarily think that it's overpowered. What I think is that it just, it paints too broad a brush for, having more interesting things in the card pool. But, despite Dwarven Tomb, there's still Reforged and Stand and Fight and Fortune or Fate. Like, not the Fortune, you can't do anything with Fortune or Fate with this one but
Well,
with
if
heroes.
you discard, if you get discarded with Fortune or Fate, you can always bring it back if you're about to lose a hero.
You can bring Fortune or Fate back. Yes, what I mean is it's not going to do anything for heroes.
No,
Right?
not.
It doesn't. I don't know. There's some weird thing. Your heroes go into your discard pile, but don't count as part of your discard pile or something like that. So you can't. The only thing you can do is bring back heroes using Fortune or Fate or House of Healing or whatever. The not Landfall, but so yeah, maybe Landfall.
Landrevol's ally that brings back a hero that's been reduced, but it comes back with 1 damage on it.
Right. Anyways,
I've got to say I like the artwork.
Do you think that this represents what it's supposed to be? Like, does Dwarven Tomb?
That looks like the Tomb of Balin.
Well, it does. I mean, we're in the Chamber of Mizarble right here, right? But like, do you think that the card that bring 1 spirit card from your discard back in your hand, do you think that is a Dwarven Tomb, or do you think the card represents what it should be?
In all honesty, I don't think, because there aren't a lot of spirit dwarves when this card was made, there was only Bloin, Gimli, and Phelan at the release of the core set. For heroes.
Valen's not a spirit dwarf.
No, I said there was only 3 dwarves.
Oh, 3 dwarves. Okay, yeah.
Of the hero variety, Phelan, Gimli, and Bloin.
Right.
Both 2, one of which is leadership, 2 are tactics. If you are going by theme, definitely, probably not. But I think they did it more for the iconography of it all.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to stand out more, and throwing things out. A tomb, okay. What sort of tomb? And they'll probably throw out several different things, and they'll just pick dwarf.
Right. Yeah.
And it'll be like just probably spitballing. Right.
Well, I think that they wanted, like you said, the iconography of what the movies did for, Balin's tomb in the Chamber of Mizarble.
Yeah.
That's what's being represented in the picture. But, does the Dwarven Tomb, it's tough, typically that question is reserved for cards like, does Baragond match his ability, right? Like, does Dwarven Tomb match this ability? I mean, I think it's kind of interesting, and the tomb is the discard pile, and you're bringing back, I don't know.
But like I say, if that was the case, then I think originally, if it was to match its name, then it would probably target allies and only allies.
Right. Or change the name to The Fall of Gandalf, right? Like where Gandalf comes back from the dead, and then back into your hand, but you can't, but you can't bring Gandalf back. I don't know.
But as for it being the way it is, it's what it is. I think it's just more done for iconography than anything else.
Right. That's a great word, iconography. Hey, kids studying for your SATs, iconography. Or for the Scripps National Spelling Bee here. In the United States, we have a spelling bee that happens every year. I think iconography is probably not one of those that.
Well, not if you're 8-year-old.
Yeah. What about the art itself?
I like
touched on
art.
it, but yeah, I really like it too. I don't know if it's like great. It's like it reminds me of the art from the second cycle, from the Cause of Doom cycle.
Yeah.
Like with obviously underground stuff. But for some reason, I just really like the art. The runes on the side of it, the design on the tomb.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I think they've done a bang out job. The cracks in the tomb itself.
Yeah. If anybody knows Dwarven runes and you wanted to translate what's on the side of the Dwarven tomb, that would be great. It's probably like, "Here lies Balin, son of Fundin, Lord of Moria."
Or if they were just trolling us and it actually says help.
Yeah, right. It's Daron's runes. I remember when we did that show, we were like, Daron's runes, some dwarf somewhere, obviously, and it's like, no, he was an elf. Ah, what?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Here lies Balin, son of Glorfindel, Lord of Moria. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, should we ring this card?
We do not want that fanfic.
No, we don't. 3 golden hairs. So do we need to ring this guy?
I think we probably should. We should just move on.
Yeah, okay. So if anybody doesn't know or has forgotten, we have a highly scientific yet arbitrary system where we rank a card on a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is the one card to rule them all, or a card that we really love, and a 10 is the card that we throw back into the fiery chasm from whence it came, or a card that's not very good. And so, Grant, I forced you to go first. Last one, I'll go first on this one. I really like Dwarven Tomb, and I just think that it's just super useful, even if it's limited with the sphere. But I think that, it's worth always looking at Dwarven Tomb in a deck that's running Spirit. It's cheap. It can bring that card back in your hand. Nowadays you don't have to do it with Noldor so much because there's enough Noldor support that you don't have to Dwarven Tomb, but it's definitely, it fits into a variety of decks. I mean, all those things that you want in a card. I'll stop short of calling this card a staple, but I will think that this card is pretty good to always look at in a deck. So I'm going to give this card a 2.
Okay, I'd agree with pretty much everything you've said there. I agree that it's always a card to look at when you're running Spirit. Recursion on stuff like Tests of Will and Galadrim's Greeting are brilliant. But even if you're, say, running out of, you need that one extra questing, and you've got that one resource sitting there, you play a Dwarven Tomb and you recur that Elrond's Council sitting in your graveyard that you can play for nothing. There you go.
Where's it sitting?
In your discard pile.
In your graveyard. This turned into Magic the Gathering, card game by Wizards of the Coast here.
Discard, graveyard, tomb,
I know,
whatever you want to call it.
Call it your library, right?
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think I'll agree with you and give it a 2 myself. Like I say, I might not put it in every deck, but it's definitely one to consider.
Yeah. Okay, well, there you have it, everybody. It's Dwarven Tomb, and we'll be back next week with more cards from the game. Have a great day, everybody.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.